Hey, hello, hi. Almost noon on a Thursday, and I'm really interested, and I think other people have asked me, and it keeps coming up, especially with younger people, but I'm curious about sobriety and alcoholism and semi-sobriety and AA and whether or not it's a feasible recovery strategy to balance sobriety with alcohol. That's what I've chosen to do, and I've tinkered with it over time. I was definitely an alcoholic. I think the latest thing I heard was 5 to 7 drinks a week or more, depending upon your body weight, and you're an alcoholic. And 4 years ago, when I first met Kate, 5 years ago, I was consuming definitely that much alcohol. I was consuming probably that much in a single day. Hold on just one sec. All right, we're back. Probably consuming that much in just a single day, and 5 to 7 drinks easily in a single day. So with that definition of alcoholism, I had been building up to that for probably 7 years, and when I met Kate, the thing that made me go sober was just the fact that it was embarrassing to have to drink that much. I had a bottle of whiskey in my backpack, and I would take it with me with her when I would go out with her, or whether I would pick her up or we'd hang out or she'd come over. Anytime I left the house, I'd bring this huge thing of whiskey because it gave me anxiety not to have it. And then the anxiety inverted, and it gave me anxiety to be so dependent on something. It was embarrassing. Like, she's going to smell it on my breath. She has a really good sense of smell. And so almost immediately after we started dating, I stopped drinking for an entire year. And that was really hard, but really necessary. And the whole drinking backstory had gotten really intense, aggressive. I basically couldn't function without alcohol, and so I just did. And because I was a bachelor, I just drank, at work, before work, after work, in the morning, before I went to bed. And as a bachelor, it was fine, but again, it only became an issue when I saw the mirror, right? Like the relationship sort of functioned as a mirror. Year of sobriety, start drinking again. After the year, really ease into it, maybe a drink every 2 months, really kind of nervous, don't want to slip back into back patterns. And then it picks up, a drink a month, a drink every 2 weeks, drink a week. And then I come to graduate school, and graduate students, like college students, they socialize over alcohol, especially writers. And so I'd have go to the bar once or twice a week, have 2 drinks, and that was my first year of graduate school. I'm in my 3rd year right now. First year, it was too much. I started to think about when's the next day I could drink. I started visualizing the drinks, and it became this big headspace thing. So after the first year, I stopped going to the bar, basically, and I'd only go once. And that was a little intense, too. I could still look forward to the drinking day, and it was just super difficult in my head. And now, my 3rd year, I'm not going to the bar really at all. And I'm limiting my drinking to twice a week. I have a drink on Wednesday or midweek, or this is my program, what I tell myself. And it helps to kind of have these guidelines. Wednesday, and then sometime on the weekend. And I have the drinks at home, at dinner. I've told myself, I've given myself permission if I want to have a drink at noon on a Sunday because I'm just reading a book, that's fine, but I typically don't. I typically wait until dinner, have it with dinner, and that's it. I don't drink hard liquor anymore, as a matter of fact, unless it's Christmas and somebody else is buying it. I don't buy it as a matter of course. If it's over the holidays and someone has Baileys, I like Baileys, I like whiskey, I'll drink that. But now I don't buy it. I don't have it in the house. We have a bottle of wine in the house that's just been sitting there. I don't drink it, and I don't like to open it because I'll drink the whole bottle probably, or I'll justify it and be like, oh, it's just sitting there, somebody should drink it, because that's how I am. But if you guys have comments or you guys have questions, I just think this is a really interesting topic to broach, the whole idea about semi-sobriety. You ask the AA camp, and the AA camp says there's no such thing as semi-sobriety. If you're an alcoholic, you're either in denial or you're in recovery, and there's no middle ground. And that may be true for a lot of people. I think everybody's story is totally different. Everybody's approach is different. Everybody's body is different. Now, some people may argue with that and say, like, no, this isn't, like, humans are all essentially effectively the same. Like, the brain is wired in the same way. The addiction psychology is the same. And to kind of trick yourself into thinking otherwise is delusional. And my experience shows otherwise. I'm on the two drinks a week program, and I feel very little anxiety about drinking. Like, I feel very little regret and guilt when I do drink, when I very much used to. They very much used to be a part of my headspace. And I just enjoy the beer, and I move on. And it seems to be like a lot of what most people do. Is there a little bit of hint of anxiety? Yes. Should I give up alcohol to avoid that little bit of anxiety? I think there's a little bit of anxiety to not drinking too. Like, you can't do something. You don't know what micro craft beer tastes like, and it does. There are a lot of fantastic brewers doing a lot of really delicious brews, and it's really fun to try those brews. It's like a mouthfeel. It's a culinary experience, and so I really enjoy that. So if you're here right now, if you're listening, I can't really tell who you are, but if you have comments, let me know, or write a question or share where you're at. I do think that the addiction thing is a personality trait, and I do think it's hereditary. My dad's an alcoholic who hasn't drank for almost 25 years. There's sort of intense addiction-like energies in my family, exercise, etc. And I think alcoholism begets other drug addictions, right? Well, I won't talk about other drugs, other things, but I've noticed with other substances that it's the like brain enjoys the augmented reality, and so it craves it and keeps wanting it, and so it's the other part of the brain has to set limits and say, like, okay. I think it's kind of the same thing with a lot of things in life. It's like I get on yoga kicks where I got to do yoga every day, and I get on writing kicks where I need to have this like really rigorous writing routine every single day, and it becomes an obsession. Now, I think there are some like quote unquote healthy obsessions and not, and I think alcohol is definitely a not. I think it wreaks a lot of havoc on your body and mind. I think it ages you really quickly from the inside out, and so. Yeah, I just wanted to crack the ice, break the ice. So if you're listening and you're struggling with alcohol, or somebody is, ask a question. It's interesting. I talked to one of my students today who was in college and said he doesn't consider himself an alcoholic, but he does drink a lot. And that's an interesting headspace to be in. I remember when I was in that headspace. And right when my mom died, I would, I'd ask a lot of people, what is an alcoholic? Or I remember I had a therapist who I was seeing at the time because it was free at law school. I said, and she asked me how many drinks I drink and what I feel when I drink. And so I mapped out for a while. My assignment was to take a journal with me wherever I go and map out, like, okay, it's 12:08. I'm having a sip of wine from a little bottle. Like, what am I feeling? Why am I drinking? Like, what's motivating? What emotions are present? That was really interesting, but like, I think I drank so much that there wasn't any conclusion that mattered. Like, my day would go like this, and I would just drink like all along the bell curve, right? Ups and downs. I'd be feeling good, feeling down, and it was just a habit. I think your body habituates, and it wants that buzz all the time. And I was never a staggering drunk, but I always had a blood alcohol content level. And I think one thing that's really helpful is talking about it. Like, I didn't know that my dad was an alcoholic until my mom died. And I think a day or two after she died, I bought a big thing of vodka, right? Because what do you do when your mom dies? You drink. And we had like the funeral plans, and there were people at the house. And so I needed an escape. And so I came in one day and he's dumping the bottle down the drain. He's just like, I can't have this here. I can't have this here in the house when this is happening. And then he said, like, you know, when you were a kid, we told you that on Wednesday nights I was going to a prayer meeting, but actually I wasn't going to a prayer meeting. I was going to an AA meeting. And like, I get it. It's like stigmatized or whatever, and you don't want your kids thinking bad of you, and you don't want the neighbors thinking bad of you. But it would have been good to know. Like, I can't say if it would have prevented me from living my own life the way I did if I had that awareness. But like for Ellie, I'm gonna tell her, like, yeah, I'm an alcoholic. That's why I'm not drinking much. Like, that's why I watch what I drink, because, you know, we have these tendencies. I think it's good to know, like, for kids to know what they're inheriting. If it's depression, if it's anxiety, if it's overeating, binge eating, whatever the vice is, like if it has a potential to be passed genetically, or, you know, or not, even if we're not sure, like, why not just talk about it, get out in the open? I think it encourages a human to human thing, a human to human experience. So yeah. And I'm also, and like, I think I'm also a sort of living experiment in the semi-sobriety case. I think this goes against a lot of the recovery literature, that you can just kind of at will manage your own vices. And I think people would say you can't in the long term. It's a doomed endeavor. But what do you guys think? What's been your experiences? The one argument that people might approach me with and say, like, well, you were never an alcoholic then. Like, if you can just cut back, it wasn't that bad for you. But like, I'm telling you, that's not the case. Like, I drank all the time, all day, and just a little bit, just like, you know, a shot here, a shot there, a shot here, a sip of wine, before yoga, after yoga, you know, just became like water, like liquid nourishment. So, Olivia Gleason, how's it going? Do you have a comment, Olivia Gleason? Let's see. Oh yeah, everybody was here and left comments, and I didn't see it because there's a comment button. Sana. But definitely something I mull over sometimes. Is my drinking a problem? I don't feel it is, but once in a while my beautiful wife gets annoyed, and I would say it is. Yeah, I come from an Irish family too, a big Irish family, and we all like to drink. But yeah, sometimes I feel like there is a fine line between being an alcoholic and just liking to drink. But by definition of 5+ drinks, I'd say I'm an alcoholic twice a week. Yeah, and I think college kids are especially in this sort of predicament where, like, college is so associated with drinking, and you know, at the very least, like, weed doesn't have the addictive properties. Like, yeah, you get a buzz, it's a different buzz, but you don't get the same physiological addiction, like that body craving. Like, maybe you crave the head space and the mind space, and maybe you crave what's up, David Turnbull? Maybe you feel the THC gives you, like, changes your quality of perception, but it doesn't leave this lasting mind monster. And I think alcohol is so bad in that regard if you find yourself sliding down the alcoholic slope, especially with your mind's ability to self-justify and be like, oh, it's not that bad. Like, oh, yeah, I'm over, but like, it's okay. And like I said, for me, I didn't have any epiphany. There's no epiphany that stopped me from drinking. There was no, like, come to Jesus moment. I didn't crash a car. I didn't, like, have a moment where I was puking and look at myself in the mirror and be like, what am I becoming, or anything like that. It was just total fear and shame. And it came from a close relationship, from starting to date Kate, and having the thought of somebody seeing me and how much I drink was just embarrassing. Just the quantity and how I needed it as a crutch. I mean, who carries around a jug of whiskey in their backpack? I mean, that's just embarrassing. And so it's crazy. Sometimes seemingly negative emotions can be really positive, like shame or embarrassment. And I'm really fascinated by that idea too, that vices can turn into virtues, or that like we have this yin yang approach. Like it's either this or it's that. But like if you're disorganized, that's a bad thing. And if you're organized, that's a good thing. But in my life, it's kind of been the opposite. It's kind of been like, I'm super organized, but I'm also anal about it. So like seeming virtues slide into vices, and vices, like, you know, it turned out to be a good thing that I was ashamed and embarrassed. It was really helpful for me. And I think this is, from what I gather, I don't have a whole lot of like my finger on the pulse of what's happening socially. That's why these Facebook Live things have been so helpful. But it seems like a really challenging thing for people to talk about. Apparently not for Brennan O'Connor, and that is an Irish last name, O'Connor. And yeah, my dad just got his Irish citizenship, so we're definitely Irish, and you can probably see it from the pale complexion. So what do you guys got for questions? Nicole, Hannah, Bailey, Mallory, Andrew, Wesley, James, Zach. Like I said, I think college is a prime time, and it's hard to suss out in college like what's alcoholism and what's just participating in the culture. And I think American culture is so, I mean, watch a football game. It's like all Bud Light ads. It's so steeped in alcohol. And alcohol totally is a drug. Sam Harris, one of his first podcast, Sam Harris, his first podcast was called Drugs and the Meaning of Life. And he talks about how like drugs are things that alter your state of awareness. And by that definition, like alcohol is a drug, caffeine's a drug, tea that relaxes you, chamomile tea is a drug. Having a conversation with a good friend who makes you feel comfortable and who gives you whatever the emotional connection hormone is, oxytocin, whatever that is, that's a drug. I think it's a really interesting perspective. Like, wine distributors are drug lords. They're selling drugs. And it's odd that alcohol gets such a free pass in our society when it's so debilitating, kind of like tobacco, but tobacco has been villainized and people still do it. But alcohol, I don't know, it just seems like there's so many, well, there's not so many, but like I mentioned, marijuana, like I often ask people, like, shouldn't per capita deaths, like the number of people who die each year from alcohol, be it drunk driving or cirrhosis of the liver or whatever, compared to the number of people who die from THC related injuries, like they overeat Doritos, I mean the classic stereotype, but like how many people die on account of weed usage? I mean, on that standard alone, it should be the legality, illegality should be switched, and we should have weed legal, alcohol illegal. But I suppose that's a whole nother question, query, discussion, but should talk about it. I hate not talking about things. I hate avoiding what's obviously there. So that's it about alcoholism. And yeah, I struggle with like, am I an alcoholic? What does it mean to be an alcoholic? Does it mean that you had some issues in your past? Are you ever over it? Is it ever gone? I don't know. And again, I went to an AA meeting, and it was really interesting. And I urge everyone to go to an AA meeting. It's kind of no pun intended, sobering to hear people talk about like how they really hurt themselves and how they really let people around them down and how they really like ruin their families, and then they had a quote unquote come to Jesus moment, and a lot of it is religious, so it is actually a come to Jesus moment. But that's really like, we don't get those intimate sort of interactions much. Like I guess church is the like religious equivalent of those sort of sacred moments. But this was kind of that space for these, it was all men, it was a men only one, and it wasn't for me. I went pretty buzzed, pretty hyper buzzed. I didn't very much drink beer when I was an alcoholic, so that's why I drink it now, I think. And I drank beer, and I think it just made me more drunk than I was expected. And I went there, and I definitely needed the alcohol to go there. And I went there because had a buzz, and it just wasn't for me. Like, it had that sense of like, these guys were so sure that AA and being totally sober was the way, and like, they're so proud of their sobriety, and that's all great, but like, it seemed like they were older than me, and that they weren't like on the same page as me. And I know young people now who are sober and who had addiction problems of all sorts, NA, AA, and they're huge gung-ho about AA, and they're fully on board with it, and that's cool. I fully respect their journey. I think everyone's psychology is different. Everybody's addictive behaviors are different. I'm just curious, like, if the semi-sobriety thing is salient for you guys, if that's a thing. And by semi-sobriety, I mean, like, you know that you struggle with addiction, and maybe you have been abusive of a substance in the past. And so you've been faced with the choice with, do I totally give up this vice, or do I continue with my abusive patterns, or do I like drastically and systematically cut back and impose a limit? Like, if you're a heroin addict, I don't know how that would look like. Or if you're a coke addict, I don't know what that would look like. But in alcohol, it seems to be pretty manageable. Like, it'd be like if you're a coffee addict, right? Like, you're gonna have 1 cup of coffee a day and no more, and that's it. Or if you're a sugar addict, you're gonna have sugar, 1 dessert 1 time a week, and that's it. But for me, it's been twice a week. 1 beer. That's really all I want, is 1 beer. 1 beer because I feel full after that. And I don't know. You don't need more than 1 beer for the taste. 1 beer twice a week. It's fine. Admittedly, like, I don't go out more than that. And admittedly, when I do go out, I do want a beer. So that's what works for me. I'd love to hear what works for you. It's this sort of thing and this topic I'm especially interested in. I wrote up a piece on the Alt Dad Diary a while ago. If you're interested, message me, and I will send you the link about what semi-sobriety is meant for me, and just in more detail about the process of super alcoholic, pre-alcoholic, mom died. Oh, what happened there? Caitlin Brock. How's it going, Caitlin Brock? I think Caitlin Brock is from Minneapolis, not totally sure. I go into more detail about like what the headspace looked like during alcoholism, because there's a lot of like denial that happens just because you're drinking. Like, you take your normal headspace and you go into a more relaxed, distracted headspace. And that is super fuzzy for me. And I think a lot of my memories are just gone because synaptically the alcohol, I think, just deadens so many synapses, and you just become so numb. And I've used alcohol for 5-7 years, just drenching my brain, soaking my brain, that I think a lot of my memories, and now still my memory muscle is so weak because of that. And they say, over time your liver will get better and your brain memory functions will get better, synapses will get stronger, absolutely. But if there are any people similarly situated, I was in my early mid-20s, I'd love to talk more. I know Facebook Lives could be potentially embarrassing if you are still thinking in your head about what's up. But feel free to message me here, Ryan, love each other. I write about this a lot and have in the past on the Alt Dad Diary. So if that's something you're interested in, you can read more there. Thanks, Brennan, for your comments. And seems like Brennan, from what Brennan wrote, it's the same thing. It's like, or it's a similar thing. It's in and of ourselves, men, because from this case, it's a sample size of 2, don't have, or it seems like, and maybe I'm extrapolating and taking more from Brennan's account than I actually know. I don't know much other than what he wrote and what I read. that maybe men like need women in this regard to have that sort of, I mean, drinking is a very animalistic thing. It's hedonistic pleasure, but maybe men need women to bring the cognitive, self-control aspect to their lives, to wake them up in a certain way. Maybe that's why we complement one another. Maybe that's why your partner, regardless of sex, male, woman, female, male, need one another to complement. Maybe you're missing that crucial piece, and maybe that's why Kate appeared in my life. She certainly did fill that role, and whether it's tied to biology or whether it's just tied to the individual person, I'm not sure. But if Brennan and I are any example, and I hate to use Brennan if he doesn't want to be used, but it is the idea that like your behaviors are being monitored by your spouse, and that affects them. And so I think the benefit of a relationship is that it challenges you to be a better person and to be a better spouse, to be a better mate. And whereas when you're by yourself, even if you're like me, I considered myself a very driven person, very motivated person, very hardworking person, yet I didn't challenge myself in that way because I think of the way that alcohol affects the brain and affects your ability to deceive even yourself. Any more questions? I think 2 people are watching right now. Any more comments, thoughts? I don't know how questions, answers. Do you have any answers? Do you have any proverbs, any helpful organizations, any thoughts on AA, any thoughts on managing vices? Because that's all this is, managing weakness, managing personal weakness, or encouraging personal growth. That's all. We'll end it with that. I really like doing the Facebook Live videos. Thanks guys for coming. It helps me get stuff, crank stuff out of my head in a little bit different way than writing. I do like to write. It's a little bit different of a rush, of an experience, of a catharsis. But this is really cool too. And I've been doing these lately, these Facebook Live things. And it's been, let me tell you, educational for multiple reasons. And I don't mean educational in like the degree garnishing sense. I mean educational in terms of self-betterment, widening my perception. Like people say, travel, expand your horizon. I think interestingly, I've been traveling with these Facebook Live things, just running up against other people's opinions, often have been like this, right? Like, and I think these things stick with me. Like I think about what people say, and I made some APC comments, you know, the feminism thread, if you scroll and look down, was one where I argued that feminism should be replaced by equality. I really learned a lot from that whole conversation, and I really appreciate that. That's really humbling. I think learning's key. You're never too old to learn, to improve, to admit your faults, to grow. And we'll leave it with that. Got to figure out if we should get the baby the flu shot. She's 7 months old, and people are super passionate about this topic. And it's really a hot button topic. And I'm leaning towards giving the baby the flu shot just because, just to prevent, to just be more safe than sorry. Maybe we can try and find out exactly what what's in the flu shot, exactly what brand, model, version they have. But I just don't like the CDC. Don't trust the CDC. Don't trust the flu shot companies. Doesn't seem to be a whole lot of clinical trials going on. I don't know. I don't want to bring up the flu shot conversation though. So peace. I'll post this. If you have comments, please leave them. If you have thoughts, please message me. No worries if it's not Facebook Live worthy of a topic, but appreciate it. Hey, Joe Walsh, Rosemont High School swimming. Rosemont High School, Rosemont, fellow Rosemont person. I've gotten in the pool again recently, Joe, and I've also contemplated piercing my nipples. I just have really sensitive skin. Joe pierced his nipples. I remember that. That was a college phenomenon. Sticks with you. Some things really stick with you. You never know when you'll make an impression on someone, Joe. Peace.